Hey, Guoba here. The new relics have been doing great so far on our DoT and follow-up units, and the new planar sets have been a treat for fast DPS and some supports. But I'd like to take an in-depth look today on the Prisoner and Glamoth sets and how they truly perform on our DoT roster. With people running them whenever, and with Ruan Mei out and Black Swan potentially being a DoT powerhouse, it would be nice to know just how strong these new sets are, and when they are in fact not as strong as other options. So like and sub if this helped, and let's begin. First, let's take a look at the Prisoner set. It gives us a 12% attack boost. This attack percent boost is in most cases a worse version of the 10% damage bonus we get from 2-piece element sets. For example, the 10% lightning damage bonus from 2-piece thunder. However, it's still okay, and with the potential Ruan Mei on the team boosting damage percent, this attack percent isn't as saturated as usual. The 4-piece of the Prisoner set will give the wearer a stackable 6% def ignore up to 3 stacks. You stack this by having dots on the enemy. A dot is a debuff, but a debuff isn't necessarily a dot. A dot is wind shear, burn, bleed, and shock. This can also be the break variant, and they will stack up separately as 2 dots for this set. Wind shear shows as 5 stacks, but it is a single dot entity. Entanglement, imprisonment, and freeze are not dots and will not count for this set. Def Ignore is a wearer-based version of Def Reduction, so all damage you do ignores a percentage of the enemy's defense. This Def Ignore is for the wearer, so if you use your Kafka's skill, your Kafka can ignore Def for that skill, increasing her damage. If you detonate dots or the enemy receives dot damage, your Kafka's shocks will ignore defense since it goes through her stats. If you have a Sampo or Guinaifen in the team, however, their dots will not be ignoring Def unless they have this set on them as well, even if you detonate them with Kafka, as it will go through their stats and their def ignore value. I've seen people recommend the dot set on Ratio for instance, since he will want some debuffs in his team, but bringing 3 dots to maximize this effect is not worth it, just like you wouldn't bring a Guinaifen and Sampo to any hypercarry. Let's also see why even Guinaifen alone can't enable this set. So def ignore works additively with def reduction, and we know that the more def ignore or reduction you get on your attacks, the stronger that more reduction on top becomes. That's amazing and it scales superbly, but what about those lower percentages? 6% def ignore with 1 dot is terrible. The 12% attack is already suffering compared to 10% damage, but if we compare 6% def ignore to a potential permanent 20% attack from 4 thunder, it's a bit rough. 6% def ignore will give our attacks a 3.24% DPS increase. Whereas 20% attack even on a well-built Kafka who is stacking a ton of attack gives us a 7% DPS increase. At 1 dot, you aren't beating out even 2-piece Musk, 2-piece element combos. At 2 dots, you get 12% def ignore, which is comparable to the quantum set's 10% def ignore versus non-quantum weak. It is strong, and for non-quantum DPS, the 2-piece of the Prisoner set is very desirable in this scenario versus the 10% quantum damage percent, which doesn't do anything for them. However, 12% def ignore is still only a 6.71% DPS increase. At 2 dots, you need to be saturated enough on damage percent or have additional sources of def reduction like Pella, Silverwolf, or the Resolution Light Cone for example, for this set at 2 dots to be beating other sets. At 2 dots onwards though, this set should be on par or beating other dot unit options. This can be achieved from a solo dot with the Patience is all you need Light Cone. If you do consider break dots here and there, then the def ignore does go up by 6% and does become best in slot. At 3 dots, this set goes crazy and is practically a permanent full power quantum set versus quantum weak. Versus previous best in slots, this set is an easy 4 to 5% DPS increase, becoming even stronger when you consider harmony buffers. 3 dots can be covered by having 3 dot units of course, but you have the potential to run 2 plus Patience is all you need, or 2 and cover it with break dots, as it should still be beating other options. You have Asta's basics that can apply burn, but it's very hard to hit, single target, and won't be making your 3 dot uptime consistent anytime soon. The Trend Light Cone can apply dots too, but relies on enemies hitting you and you have to be a preservation unit. When considering resolution on a dot sub DPS or other sources of def ignore and reduction like Ruan Mei E1, the power of this 4-piece just continues getting stronger. So if you're running a dot unit with 2 or more dots, consider using this set. At 3 dots, you should be using it for maximum damage. This set can be used on units that apply dot and that can also use a dot sub DPS like Hook or Himeko or Serval with a Guinaifen and enough breaks. But in Himeko's instance, the full op set is just better. CRIT DPS, you won't be running this set. Onto Glamoth. It is pretty much a better spacing station, provided you're hitting 135 speed, which you should be on DoT units. 12% damage and 12% attack is most of the time better than the 24% attack provided from Space Healing Station. Furthermore, this threshold is very easy to hit on DoT units who already spam speed substats, as their detonation damage scales on how fast they are. With Asta, the damage percent becomes more desirable, with Ruan Mei less so. At 135 speed, it isn't too big of an increase over Space Healing Station though, despite this damage percent bonus. However, once you start hitting 160 speed, you get an 18% damage bonus instead. It isn't 12% plus 18%, it's just an extra 6% damage buff for a total of 18% damage and 12% attack. Getting to this 160 speed though is quite tricky, and that's why CRIT DPS don't go Glamoth most of the time. Even if they do hit 160 speed, the crit rate over Nert and Rutilant is very desirable. On DoTs though, we don't care about crit unless we are feeling sassy, and so we have subs spare to stack speed with. And that also translates to being able to run Glamoth at 160 speed for a 4% DPS increase over Space Healing Station. If you can't hit the 160 speed buff, well, Asta is a great teammate to help out with that. Or Ruan Mei alongside the Patience Light Cone again. What a great Light Cone. Anyway, eventually, in the endgame, you have tons of speed sub-stacked. But even without 160 speed, Glamoth is still great for our DoT units, and the world can be better to farm, considering the Penacony set over Fleet. Fleet is a great supportive option for DoT teams, but a lot of harmonies may enjoy the 5% energy instead. So combining Prisoner and Glamoth, we can see a 10% DPS increase for any DoT unit over their previous option. You want to hit 3 dots, 2 dots minimum to use this set. For Break DPS, this set will still be strongest at 3 dots over the Thief set, as the Death Ignore boosts the base kit and the Break kit immensely. I hope this helped out anyone curious on farming the new world and domain. Thanks to all my amazing YouTube members, thanks for watching and have a good day.